Hi, and today we're going to be taking a look at this book here, PrimeDirective, the Starfleet Universe role-playing game by Task Force Games, as you can see there. And we'll take a better look at the book and inside the book in just a few minutes. But here's some background on the book. It was published in 1993 by Task Force Games. Now, Task Force Games has now become Starfleet Games, and I'll have a link in the description so you can find their website and their publications. And it has this really strange license. It seems to be a perpetual license that they have with Paramount. They acquired it, I think, in the early 70s. And it's called the Starfleet Universe license. So basically, Starfleet Games, used to be Task Force Games, can publish Star Trek games. And they do. Probably the best known one is Starfleet Battles, which is more like a board game, war game with starships and all that. And they seem to have the license only for the early Star Trek stuff. So this would be the original TV series, and they do have some things from the animated series. Interestingly, they also have, I don't know if it's pronounced Kazintis or the Zintis, who were cat-like creatures, aliens that were written by Larry Niven. He actually owns them because he's written other books with those characters in them, but they also made it into the license for this book. But you also have your Klingons and your Romulans and your Gorn. Now, they don't have, for whatever reason, they don't have the license for specific characters. So there's no stats for Kirk. There's no stats for Spock or Chekhov. And PrimeDirective was their first RPG written in this universe. And they've kept the license, and they've actually kept it up. You can see on their website that what they've done more recently is they've made ports. They've published other games in the Starfleet universe, so they've adapted it to either D20, which I guess would be 3rd edition D&D or 3.5. The modern D20, they actually did a variant on that, and also GURPS. So let's take a look inside the book, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the good, the bad, and the verdict. So here's the book itself, and you can see that it has beautifully painted cover, a lot of action going on here, and they have their Starfleet jackets on. Maybe a little violent. I don't know if they're violating the PrimeDirective here. And there's some images on the back cover. So a nice little painted image of characters here. What's clearly the Enterprise, which shows how they had the license. And there's a Klingon, an old school Klingon down there in the corner. Now let's take a look inside. So it starts out, and you can see all the artwork is black and white. It's nice, but it's all black and white. Not like a modern book, maybe. And it starts out with a little bit of fiction to give you an idea, a flavor for the universe. And, it very clearly shows you, initially, this is in the Star Trek universe. Gives you a little sector map here. And talks about their other products like Starfleet Battles. So then it gets into the idea of prime teams. And this is where it might be a little bit different. We're used to the TV shows where your captain and your first officer beam down and your medical officer. In this universe, maybe you're not playing the bridge crew so much, although you could. There's nothing in the rules say that you can't. But you're playing a prime team, like theirs is the Black Eagles, is their example one. So you're sort of like a special ops team. You might be attached to a starship, but then you're the one who's sent down to the planet to deal with things. They give you a little history of the Federation and maybe how their Federation differs a little bit from the movies and the TV shows. All your standard races are here from Star Trek. Vulcan, let's see what we got. Andorian. They have some other ones like Cygnon and Alpha Centauri. And then it gets into character creation, which they tell me is a little bit like Traveler, although I haven't played Traveler. Where you advance through the ranks there. And let me just go on here. And then you could sort of specialize when you could be a sharpshooter if you want to specialize. And there's a little bit more of the line art there. Get some personal interest skills. So that's character creation. Now, I think it's worth stopping on this page for a second where you can see this is the character sheet. It's very much a skill-based system. Look at all those skills. Much, much more than, say, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition as an example. But it doesn't have as many things in terms of feats or special abilities other than that, unless maybe you have like some psionic skills as a Vulcan. And I think it has 8 attributes. And then it gets into sort of the meat and bones. And it has this tri-code system where depending on how high you roll, you could get a minimal, a moderate, or a very successful success. I think some other modern games do that also. Nice little bit of artwork in there. So this is all just the rules for playing the game, standard to anything, and then goes through what all the skills mean. Okay, there's a Tholian down there. There's a Klingon over there. And their Klingons are the old school TV Klingons. They're not the bumpy-headed Worf and Next Generation Klingons. I don't think their license covers that. So a lot of pages on how the skills and the system works. Let's skip ahead a little bit. Here's your equipment pages. So I just want to skip ahead a little bit to get to some of the other interesting parts. This is all combat. And more equipment. So they do all the equipment is illustrated. It's kind of nice there. Now, I think this is a good chapter. And in terms of Star Trek, there's some nice background. Talks about the Federation races like the humans, and there's the Vulcans and Cygnans and what they are. I also think it's interesting because you can read then their take on the Klingons. And their Klingons sort of have servant races, which I don't know if they're really quite slaves or client races, but the Klingons definitely have an influence over them. They have like a bear-like one and a reptile-like one. So I think that when you get to the aliens chapter, it gets much more interesting than the system chapter. And the Romulans are here, the Kzinti or the Zinti and the Gorns, the Tholians. So some of these races are a little more fleshed out in this book than they would have been in the original series. Orion Pirates. New race called the Hydrons, who have 3 arms and 3 legs. I think they're kind of neat looking. And they don't breathe oxygen, they breathe methane. And they have a couple of different cat-like races, like a dinosaur-like races, kind of a whale-like race. Let me show you the picture there. So, I mean, they really did take the time to try and give you a lot of different options in terms of the races. Bug-like race here, I think they're the Celtorians. Celtorians, yeah. And here's a few pages of sample NPCs. So if you are using their system, if you need a bounty hunter, there he is. You need a bartender, there they are. You need a Federation representative or a spy, they're all in these pages. And now we get into scenarios. They give you 2. They have this one, Web of Darkness. This is interesting because it's kind of like a ship that's adrift, and you have to go on this ship. And the Tholians have some kind of strange crystal being in there. There's some Romulans who've been affected, who've been mentally affected by this. And let's see what else we got in here. Like, this is a map of the ship. I don't think that that's really as useful as it could be, but it does show you where all the encounter areas are. And then there's that. And then they also give you a second one. They give you a second one, which is more based on this front cover where you have this sort of ancient temple. A little bit more maybe of a dungeon crawl, but it's there. Let's see where they give you the map for that one. Yeah, here we go. Here it's a ziggurat. Is that how you say it? And then there's a area map. Kind of old school, but it's serviceable. So you're getting 2 adventures with this. They give you a Starfleet universe timeline to kind of show you, and they have a bunch of wars and things in here, like the Gorn and the Romulan and the Lyran and the Klingon, all kind of different wars, which I think link, again, more closely to their Starfleet battle universe. You might not use that. Now, what I think also is nice is at the end is that they give you this whole Prime team, and they tell you the names of them. They give you a picture of who the members are. There's men, women, Vulcans, Rigelians, Cygnans, so a lot of diversity there. And then they give you all the stats here. So if you want to play in their system, it's ready to go. And here's a little trick. If you don't want to play in their system, but you're playing a D20 game, these would be fine for maybe first, second level characters. So for accuracy, like acrobatics, instead of rolling 4 dice, make that a +4. You actually probably could swap this over into a D20 mechanism without too much heartache. And they give you plenty. They give you, I think, 6 or 7 NPCs. So let's take a look at the good, the bad, and the verdict. The good. It's a fun read. It's written with a very personal style. It doesn't feel very corporate or dry. I've read it several times and I really enjoy it. Other thing, I think the idea of teams are a really good idea, this idea of prime teams. And they address that in the book, that are you really going to send your captain, your first officer, and your chief surgeon down to a planet? That's great for TV, but is it realistic? So this is a good way to sort of have, like a special ops team, and they get sent into the most dangerous situations or the most high-tension situations. There's 2 sample adventures in here that easily could be adapted even if you're running another system. They're good for ideas. And I think the artwork is nice. It's all black and white line artwork, but it was nicely done. The bad. The system is very complex, and I'm being totally honest, I haven't run it. It took me a while even to wrap my head around the way the system works. I think that it maybe shows its age a little bit, and also shows that it was a role-playing system written by people who do, tabletop war games with ships. There's a lot of abbreviations that you have to remember how things are. So I don't know if it's the best system. There's also no starship combat system. They wanted you to buy Starfleet battles to go along with it. However, I think it would be very easy to house rule a theater of the mind kind of system. You could easily roll for initiative, and your pilot, if they get a successful roll, that will help the gunner, and the gunner gets to shoot, and the engineer might be able to get a little bit of extra armor class or shielding for the ship. Another thing that might be bad is it is out of general circulation. You have to order it directly from Starfleet Games. Occasionally you might see a used copy pop up on Amazon. I'm sure you could get it on eBay. Copies I've seen are fairly cheap. So even though it's out of general circulation, you can find it, and you can find it very reasonably. So what's the verdict? I wouldn't seek out this book for the system. I don't think that it's the best example of a role-playing system. It's not horrible. I mean, I think it is playable, but I don't think I would seek it out for that. However, if you really like Star Trek, there's a lot of nice ideas in here, and it's sort of an alternative take on Star Trek. But you could easily run it in the mainline Star Trek universe, or if you want to run a Next Generation campaign or something like that. And also, if you want to take a look at it, if you're playing GURPS or you're playing D20, basically D&D 3rd Edition or Pathfinder or Modern D20, those versions are out there too. So overall, I really like the book. I've read it a couple times. I have some of their other publications that went along with it. So I do think it's worth checking out. And just to end the video, if you'd like to support Sharp Mountain Games, there's a link to all our products in the description. Even if you just want to come and take a look. And thanks so much for watching the video.